Hey everybody, before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let everyone know that we have a brand new course available on the website called Fullstack Social. Inside of this course, we create a custom backend server using NodeJS, and we also support the HTML frontend for the browser and also a mobile iOS application that looks kind of like this. I'm going to quickly demo what you can do inside of this application by logging in like so. As a hiker, we are presented with the UI that looks like this for all the posts that we have for this particular user right now. In the iOS application, we can pretty much do the exact same thing by logging in. We are presented with all the post objects just like so. All right, so that is a very quick demo. If you want to check out more details about the course, make sure to use the link in the description below. With all that being said, let's begin with our show right now. Why, hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having a fantastic morning. In today's video, which is going to be lesson number 2 of the Fullstack MyJournal series, what I would like to do is to show you how we can transform our routes here that we created in the last episode. I want to transform these guys into more standardized REST API endpoints. So let me show you exactly what I mean by taking you back into my editor right here. So the first task to kind of take care of is to transform these guys into REST API endpoints that follow this convention. So we have some GET requests, we have some POST requests, and also some DELETE requests like so. And here is the actual pattern that we want to create. So this might look a little bit confusing, but it's actually pretty simple using the Sales MVC framework. And the second thing I would like to do is to show you how to persist some data using the Waterline ORM tool. So this is object relational mapping. This is also pretty easy. I don't exactly want to use our dummy database, which is what we created right over here in the last episode. Speaking of the last episode, if you missed the first lesson, make sure to check it out using the link in the description down below. Once you watch that entire video, make sure to come back here and watch lesson number 2. Okay, so with all of the intro out of the way, let me move this text editor, move that to the right. And let's see what we have for our application. Last episode, we have our brand new empty application. We have the NodeMon, which creates our app, runs it using port 1337. So this is actually a word right here. If you guys know exactly what this word is, please leave it down in the comments below. If you refresh the Chrome browser right now, you can see we are hitting it with the GET request of /post right here. And we're listing out all these objects because our endpoint right here is sending back all of those post objects like so. Okay, so pretty good stuff with our custom routes so far. And the problem right now is every time, let's say I want to hit the creation endpoint right now, right? I am going to have to hit it using what I define in this endpoint right here. So for example, I am going to hit it with a create like this. And I'm using the title, let's say 1, 2, 3, and lovely 4, 5, and 6. So hit the create right here. It creates it using this guy down below. And if I go back and refresh, you'll see that I have my brand new post object with ID of number 4. Okay, that's how the creation works. And this is actually not so good. Not so good because it doesn't follow the REST API conventions. Instead of using /create, right? What I'm going to do is introduce a brand new endpoint right now. And the way you introduce a endpoint is to actually define it using a GET, a POST, or a DELETE. There are a ton of different methods for HTTP. These are just the 3 that I want to use for today's video. So whenever you create an object, you actually want to use a POST request. And the pattern I'm going to use is /post like so. And I'm actually going to use the creation endpoint that we already have created. So colon, post controller and create. I'm going to comment this entire line out, hit the save now. And because I don't have this create anymore, if I go, let's see, create, this should be in memory. If I try to hit this, it's going to present us with a 404. Okay, so make sure you are aware of this post request. And now what I can do is I can try to hit the /post instead of using the Chrome browser. So /post without the S. You can see this also presents us with a 404. Now, the reason why we get a 404 is because the Chrome browser right here, every time you send a request with a URL like this, it's going to send a GET request, and we really need to send a POST request instead. So how do we send a POST request is the question. Well, the way you actually do this is to either use the terminal and the curl command. That's kind of hard, so instead I'm going to use a tool called Postman, which is right over here. You want to download this using, I guess, Chrome, right? So let me show you how this is done. Just search for Postman and you'll get to this URL right here. Hit the download somewhere inside of this guy, and then once you download it, you can launch the Postman tool and you'll get to a screen that looks kind of like this. Every time they update Postman, I feel like the UI changes, but it should look something like this. All right, so standard stuff right here on the left side, you have the option to change a request to get, post, put, patch, delete, and so on and so forth. If you use a get request, you can hit this right here. So this is pretty much what the Chrome browser is doing right now. You can see we have a 404 right here. It also says not found. You can hit the post with an S, and you can see that you get all of your JSON objects back previously, just like the Chrome browser. So let's see what happens if we hit the post request like this and try to hit the actual post endpoint like that. So hit a send, and you see that we actually get a different response. We have the post right here, and we're hitting the /post endpoint, and we get a 200. And for this warning right here, we are printing out undefined and undefined. So let's kind of see where exactly that is being printed out. Let's head back to the creation endpoint, which is this guy. We are printing out the title and body. And because we don't have the title body, it's saying undefined and undefined like that. Why don't we go ahead and fix this by commenting all this out right now. So hit the save, refreshed, and reload. I'm going to hit this, and you'll see that we are simply hitting the /post endpoint using the post request right here. And we're getting a 200, which looks pretty good. And so what do I want to do here? I think I'm going to close out of this little editor and shrink this down just a little bit here. All right, so for the create endpoint, what I'll do is I want to access the title and body from this post request. And whenever you have a post request, you pretty much want to pass the parameters such as title and body using this xwww form URL encoded. The way this works is you want to hit a key. So I'm going to use the title key, and the value is going to be my lovely title. And let's see for the other parameter, which is going to be my body, my post body here. Okay, so these are the two objects that I want to pass using this post request. You can now hit the send right here. It's going to hit the same URL. And to access my title and body now, I'm going to use a syntax that looks a little bit different compared to this request parameter title. It's very similar, but just a little bit different. So title equals requests, and you want to access the body object of your entire request and access the title like that. And for the actual post body, so post body equals the request and body. And this might be a little bit confusing, but because we define the actual post body to be this right here, we actually have to say post body, or actually body.body rather. You might want to change this. If you're confused, just change this to post body like that, and just copy that and use post body instead. All right, looks pretty good. And now what I can do is I can console log this. So let's say console, or maybe sales.log.debug, and we'll say my title plus title like that, and hit save. All right, so all I'm expecting right now is to print out the title of my lovely title right here. So send, and we get the debug statement of my title is my lovely title. We can do the same thing for the post body. So for this guy, we are going to say body, and this will be post body like so. Make sure to type it out correctly, obviously. Hit the save, reload, hit the send right here for the request, and we have the post body is whatever we define over here, right? So my post body here, if you just modify this to be whatever, hit the send, you'll see the actual value from your Postman tool on the right side. Okay, so that's pretty much how you define a post request. And using this convention of /post, it follows the REST API conventions a lot nicer. All right, the last thing we need to fix is to actually create the post object inside of this dummy database. So why don't I just remove these comments right here and just say that right here. And I think I'm calling this body a post body now. So let's just remove that and use post body instead. Now let's hit the save and let's see, our actual request is done. I'm going to hit send right here. It's going to create that using the actual post object. And I'm just going to, let's see, hit the request of post. I think I can do something like this right here and hit the send just like so. And you can see now I have ID 1, 2, 3, and 4 using the values that I'm passing into the post request like so. Okay, so this is pretty much how we modify the create endpoint to follow more REST API conventions. The next thing you probably want to configure here is the find by ID endpoint. So previously we defined it as the find by ID right here, and we don't exactly want to do this either. So let's follow the convention here of using a get request. So get and just say slash, so slash post, and let's use the slug of post ID, hit the quote right here, and I'm going to use the same endpoint right here. So why don't I just copy and paste this bad boy into the editor. All right, so I'm gonna hit this save one more time. And the way I'm going to access this endpoint is to use the get request right here. So let me just change that. Actually, let me use this one, might be a little bit better. I'm going to use the post endpoint, hit the send right here. It's going to say not found. So let me try to save this. And the way to actually fix this is to use slash and 1 like so. And you can see that by using the ID 1, I'm listing out the actual post objects right here. So let's use the value of 4. This is the actual post that I created before, but because I restarted it, it's no longer there. Hit the 3 and I see title 3 and body 3, which is right here. So title 3 and body 3. Okay, so that's how we modify our get request to fetch the post object. And now that you kind of see how to customize your REST API endpoints to follow more conventional REST APIs, next thing I would like to move on to is to discuss a little bit about data persistence using Waterline. And this is actually very, very easy to do. And the reason why we do this is because we obviously don't want to, continue to use this dummy database right here, right? And this guy is going to be very problematic and it doesn't reflect what a true production application looks like. So what we are going to do is to use Waterline and, briefly go over what Waterline is. You can just search sales and Waterline. And this guy will take you to the Waterline right here. And so by default, sales apps uses Waterline as an ORM tool. You can click into this right here. It'll load the documentation for models and ORM. And you should probably read exactly what the documentation tells you. And it talks about how it's database agnostic. And you can use this for Postgres, MySQL, Mongo, and Redis, and so on and so forth. I don't exactly want to get into all the details of what Waterline is capable of doing right now. So let me close out of that and take you back into Postman. And the way we are going to start introducing data persistence in our application, it's very simple. The first thing I'll do is I want to maybe comment out the dummy database that we have up here. So the moment I do this and save, the entire application is pretty much broken, because we don't have access to this all post variable right here. So let me show you how it's broken by modifying that. Hit the post endpoint right here. You'll see that all post is not defined. Okay, so that's how we are going to start. The way we are going to insert objects into the database is very simple. I'm just going to go ahead and create an object first inside of my application. So this might look a little scary because we have a ton of different files on the left side. But basically we have the API directory, which is where our post controller is located. There is another folder right here called models. I'm going to create a new file and call this post.js like that. Now, whenever you introduce models inside of your sales MVC application, it's going to tell you to do a couple of things in terms of how the database is going to manage itself and migrate the data. Don't worry about this stuff too much, but basically it tells you, it looks like it doesn't have a migration policy configured. In a production environment, sales always uses the migration of safe to protect against inadvertent deletion of your data. but during development you can choose these 3 options right here. So I'm going to choose number 1 for alter. So hit that, hit 1, hit OK. The problem with this is every time you hit a save, it'll prompt you with this message again. So it tells you that to configure this, you just want to go into config/model.js. So open this guy and let's go into one of these scary files. And down here, if you scroll down a little bit, it tells you that you can actually uncomment this out, hit the save right now. And every time you save, it's not going to prompt you with that message anymore. Don't worry about this stuff too much, but just be very careful. If you actually have some data migration policies not set correctly, it can delete your entire database. So do be mindful of that aspect of migration. Okay, so with all that being said, let me now go back to my models post.js file. I'm going to expose a file called post.js, and let's say module.exports equals some kind of object. And this object is going to have attributes. So I'm basically defining what my post object is going to be. It's going to have attributes, and inside of these attributes, I think I need a colon right here. So colon, and the attributes I want to actually save for my post object is the title and also the body. Now for the title, I can specify a couple of different properties of the title. And so the first property is going to be the type. This is going to be a string like so. And I'm also going to require this title to be saved into my post object. So I'm going to say require as true. I'm going to specify pretty much the same attributes for my body. So let's just say type, and this is going to be a string as well, and required. So I think it's required of true like that. Okay, I'm going to save my project. And now that I have this model object defined inside of this models folder, I'm going back to my post controller right here. And now what I can do is maybe I'll close out of this guy for some more space. For the creation endpoint right here, I'm going to comment out this code that inserts this new post into the all post object. I'm going to comment that out, and instead of using this dummy database, what you can do is you can say post right here for the actual object that you define. You can create it using the properties of title, and let's see title from above right here. So this is right here, the title. You actually want to wrap all this right here into curly braces. And for the actual post body, you define it as body, but this is post body up here, so I'm going to use post body like that. Okay, so this guy is the key, this is the key, these are the values. That's just how you define things inside of JavaScript. And at the very end here, you want to use .execute, so exec and function, and this guy I think is just an empty function callback like this. If you're used to Swift programming, this is just a completion handler. And we are going to say console, and let's see .log, let's see finished creating post object like so, and let's say return and res.end just to end the request. I'm going to comment this guy out because I don't want to end the request until I create my object right here. This is asynchronous, so this actually occurs a little bit later. All right, so I'm going to hit save and restart my project again. I'm going to go back to the actual post request that creates my post object with these two keys, title and post body. Hit the send right here. And you see we are finished creating our post object like so. Now you don't know exactly if the post object was created. I believe you can check the error on this callback function right here. So you can say if we have an error like so, you can say res, so return res.server error like so, and I believe you can send the error.toString like that. So I'm going to save again and try to send this post request like so, and it tells me that I finished creating my object, which means that I probably didn't have an error. So to check whether or not your post objects are being created properly, I'm going to go into this endpoint right here. So hit the send right here. It says that all posts is not defined because of this error, line 18. So instead of using all posts, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say post and fetch all of my objects by using find like this. So just plain old find, paren, and let's execute this little find process with the function. I believe it's the error and also the result. And so that's my callback function like so. And what I'll do is I'm going to comment that out. If this is actually fetched properly, I'm going to say res.send, and instead of sending all posts, I'm going to send the result back. Okay, so hit the save, restart right there, and I'm going to hit the send for the actual request like that. Let's kind of see what's happening here. So res.send. Okay, it doesn't exactly like this res because it's being defined 2 times. I'm going to define that as post and copy that and paste here, hit save, restart, and hit send one more time. And you'll see that I have 2 post objects being persisted inside of my database. They are saying the same thing of my lovely title because I created the actual post twice. So let's say right here is 444 or 555 rather, and 6666, hit the send, go back to the post endpoint and hit the send again. You'll see now I have 555 and 666 because I persisted a brand new post object inside of this creation endpoint right here. Okay, so I'm going to remove this comment right there and remove these comments as well. Everything with the application is looking pretty good. You might want to check this error right here if the actual execution was not being performed correctly. So for example, if error, we are going to kind of copy and paste this guy right here. So just copy and paste that with the return, and you should be good to go. So hit the save, and all this stuff should work without too much problem. So that looks okay. And that looks pretty fantastic right there. Alright, so that's pretty much how we create and fetch objects using Waterline with Sales MVC. If you want more help with the syntax right here and also down here, you are going to want to go back to Chrome and look up, let's see, Waterline Sales and create. And they have a ton of documentation right here as to how you actually write out the syntax right here. You'll see that the way that they create these objects look a little bit different. They have the await syntax right here. So let me show you how this little bit of syntax is written out instead of using this exact function here. So let me just go back into here. And the way they actually want you to write this out is instead of writing this, which is a little bit long and hard to read, you actually want to use the async await pattern, which is just use await like that. And you want to say post.find like so. I'm going to say const post equals that. And just say res.send post like so. Now this is pretty much the same thing as this. So I'm going to comment that out, hit the save, and this should be okay. You can try to hit send right here, but your actual application is not launched correctly. Down here, there is a very, very long error and tells you that the await is only valid in async functions. You might not know exactly what this is, but basically in JavaScript, there is an async await promise pattern. So for these functions right here, if you ever use an await, you have to make sure that this says async like that, and just hit the save, and now your function is being compiled correctly. And you can hit this endpoint again, add /post, so hit the send, and we should be good to go. So we have the post, and we are now listing all of the post objects yet again. So this is a syntax that you probably don't want to write anymore. Just use this. As you can clearly see, this is a lot more succinct and easy to read. In order to capture the error that might occur during the fetch, you want to say this right here, so try. Take this, put it inside of your try right here and catch, and let's see, catch the error. And also say res.server error like so, and error.to string or whatever you want to print out for the actual error goes inside of here. So let me try to save and rerun this bad boy by hitting the send like so, and we get exactly the same thing. You can modify the actual creation process to use the async await style syntax, or you can use this. Either way, it's really up to you. The last thing I think I want to cover before I end today's video is how we can delete these objects inside of our application now, right? So for example, when we have the objects with ID of 3, 2, and 1, let's say I want to delete object with ID of 3. Well, the way to do this is to define a route that actually deletes your objects. So hit a comma. I'm going to define the delete route as post like so. And post controller, I'm going to define a new route called delete. So let's say back to post controller, which is that, and down at the very bottom right here, why don't we say comma delete, and this will also be a function that takes in a request and also a response. Down below, why don't I just simply say response dot send and trying to delete, let's say post now, and try to hit save. What I want to see is this actually being printed out down below here. Okay, so I'm going to go back to over here. Let's create a new tab. Let's modify this to be a delete request, and let's say I think I just want to copy all of this right here without the S and just paste that in here. I should be okay. The send, and now you should be seeing something down here. So trying to delete the post now is actually being sent out. Okay, so this is just sending all of this to the actual Postman tool right now. So that looks pretty good. And in order to delete a particular post with an ID of 1, 2, and 3, I'm going to go back to my routes right here. I'm going to use the slug pattern again, like what we did for the get request. So /slug of post ID. Now I can go back to the controller.js, and down here I'm going to grab the post ID equals request.param. Post ID, whatever you define as your slug needs to be exactly like that. And the last thing you need to do is to delete the actual post object from your post using orm. So the way to do this is to say post, and let's say dot destroy. So destroy, and you want to use the ID of whatever you passed in as the post ID, like that. Okay, I'm going to use the await syntax. So let's say async, and why don't we say await like that. And now we should say res and finished deleting post like that. So hit the save. All this stuff looks pretty good. And the last thing you need to do is to make sure that we can delete some kind of post object. So let's pass in the ID of, let's say 3, hit the send. You can see that we have deleted our post object right here, or at least we should have deleted it. So what exactly is going on? I have the delete request right here, and it's actually passing me back this object, which isn't exactly what I want. So let me go back to post right here and check if that was actually deleted. That looks okay. The post was deleted like so, and it looks kind of okay. I don't exactly like how this object is being returned. So what you actually need to do is you want to modify a configuration of your sales application. I believe inside of blueprints.js, there is this little bit of configuration that automatically exposes your RESTful routes for your models. I don't exactly want to do this, so let me just say rest is false and save my project again. And let's go back to postcontroller.js. So instead of seeing this, let me try to delete the ID of 2 and send, and now it says not found, which is kind of what I would expect. So let's kind of go back to the routes right here. I'm going to hit Command Option S to save all of this entire file. I'm going to hit the send right here, and it says finish deleting post now. And let's say I'm going to hit the refresh right here. You see that I only have one more post. I'm going to delete this post now with ID of 1, and I'm going to delete that, hit the send and finish deleting post. Refresh this one more time. You can see all of my post objects are now completely deleted from the database. If I want to create another one, I can just go back to the post request right here and just say 111 and 22222. This guy's a little bit hard to highlight, but 222 send. We created, hit the refresh for the post get endpoint, and we now have our post object with just one object inside of the entire array. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna wrap it up for today's lesson. If you want to look up more information on REST API conventions, you can do a quick Google search here. You'll find the 10 best practices for better REST APIs. And down here on this chart, they give you a brief explanation as to what the get, post, put, and delete requests should actually do for your REST API. Make sure to give this a read. If you don't understand anything that's in here, make sure to leave a comment down below. In the very next episode, we are going to move on and consume all of our REST API data, all of the data here, and then put it inside of an iOS application right here. We're also going to look at how to create a post by sending a post request from our iOS application, very similar to this page right here. Hopefully you're looking forward to that. I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye bye guys.